Hey there, everybody. This is Ed, and welcome back to another edition of Bagel and Booze. We're in the month of March, and well, we're still trying to celebrate all things Irish. And while I tried to do recordings a bit more during this month of the Irish, didn't quite happen due to scheduling and other things. And well, St. Patrick's Day falling on a Friday, a little bit too much of the Guinness kind of prevented us from doing a recording. Although it probably would have been an epic recording of me after a day of Irish dance and drinking. But in any event, we've got a beer for today that we're going to review. It's a little bit of a stretch for Irish, but you'll see how it kind of ties into St. Patrick's Day once we get into reviewing and do our wonderful The More You Know moment. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and get the Beercam set up, and we'll go ahead and start doing our review. So today we're going to be reviewing an offering out from Uinta Brewing, which is out of Utah, and it is their Peppermint Patty, which is an American Imperial Porter. It clocks in about 8.5% ABV, and with this, well, we're gonna make a stretch. It's mint flavored, I guess if you want to throw it in there. What kind of is synonymous with mint and March? It is a mint flavored beer, but none other than the Shamrock Shake. And, I guess with that, we'll just drive it right in. We're not even going to cut anything with it, and we're just going to drive right into the More You Know moment. It's a little bit of a stretch, but nothing's more synonymous with mint and March than the Shamrock Shake. And believe it or not, this iconic shake has not always been mint flavored. Well, we'll take that back. So the Shamrock Shake officially debuted in 1970 as the St. Patrick's Day green milkshake, but it was first created in around 1967. Most research kind of shows 1967. There's a little bit of stuff that says 66, but it was created by Hal Rosen, who was a Connecticut McDonald's owner and operator. When he created it, it was mint flavored, but just like any good corporation, McDonald's kind of mucked around with it. When they released it in 1970, it was nothing more than a mashup of vanilla ice cream and lemon and lime sherbet dyed green. No mint in sight. This milkshake, that came out, it was regionally offered in areas that were largely Irish American population. Obviously the big ones being of Boston and Chicago and New York with that. And it wasn't until like 1973 that McDonald's wisens up, and it doesn't get mint, but they dropped the sherbet, and it literally was just a vanilla milkshake dyed green, much like the Chicago River. Kind of stays that way for another decade, and it's not until around 1983 that they finally added the mint flavoring. In 1974, we do see something happen with this. In the milkshake, the shake, it was responsible for helping to build the very first McDonald house in the Philadelphia area. Around this time, Eagles tight end Fred Hill's daughter was battling leukemia. The Hills wanted to be as close as possible, and can understand this. His father wanted to be as close as possible to their daughter for treatment. They would just be camped out, in benches and sofas at the hospital. There was no formal Ronald McDonald houses at the time, so your choice was to stay there at the hospital. And many families that traveled out a distance to the hospital, they couldn't afford local accommodation, so they had to stay at the hospital. And the Hills, seeing other families during doing this, Fred wanted to help out and change this fact. Fred, with the help of his teammates, decided they were going to raise some money and raise some funds. And during this process, at that time, Eagles general manager Jim Murray he had a friend in McDonald's advertising, and suggested that they partner during their next promotional push, which happenstance was just had to be St. Patrick's Day. And the sales and proceeds, I think it was about 25 cents if I recall, 25 cents of each Shamrock Shake sales were going to go to this cause. So together, Hal Rosen, if you remember him, he's the one who created the Shamrock Shake. Ray Kroc doesn't need any introduction with that. Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and the Eagles, they raised enough money to purchase and renovate a 4-story house. This house was the first McDonald's house. And since that time, a portion of all Shamrock Shake sales have gone to the Ronald McDonald House charity. In 1975, the Shake gets a little bit of another boost, I guess if you want to call it, where they introduce Uncle Grimace, who was Grimace's green uncle who took annual trips to McDonald Land at St. Patrick's Day to visit his nephew. I shit you not. This is real, and I got proof.
Oh, you shouldn't have a Shamrock Shake, I take it. Oh, it's great. It's green. Where on earth can we get more?
There's only one place on earth to get a Shamrock Shake. McDonald. But only for a limited time.
I better have one then.
Sure,
Talk about offensive? I don't know. But in any event, Uncle O'Grimacy, for who he was and what he's worth, he lasted in about till the mid-1980. Outside of those two things in the 70s, there wasn't much else that happened with the Shake, save the 1983 edition of the mint flavor. Well, I guess we'll back it up. There was one in, I think it was around 1980. Actually, it was 1980. Basically kind of taking the Shake form and dropping it into a sundae form. Suffice it to say, this died pretty quick, and it was dead by the next year. Outside of that, we've had a few iterations of the Shake during the Shake's run. We've had the Shamrock Chocolate Shake, which aka is the McLeprechaun Shake, which supposedly you can go in and you can request this. It is chocolate added into your Shamrock Shake. Not much better than a chocolate and mint that I can think of. We also had a Shamrock Chocolate Chip Frappe, Shamrock Mocha, and also the Shamrock Hot Chocolate. I guess really outside of those couple things, in the 70s and the 80s, early 80s, we don't really have much change that goes around for the Shamrock Shake until about, I guess, really 2012. Prior to this, it had been a regional offering. You had to use a Shamrock app or Shamrock website to track down the offerings of where you could get the Shamrock Shake because it wasn't a national-wide offering. In 2012, McDonald's goes nationwide with the Shamrock Shake. And although they went nationwide, McDonald's franchises were not required to offer it, so they could pick or choose if they wanted to do it. But unlike before, where it was only in select cities or regions, now it was completely nationwide, and those franchises could pick and choose whether or not they wanted to offer it. In 2017, we see a little bit more of innovation and change, and the first of that is we actually get a new flavor, which is stuck around, and it is the Oreo Shamrock Shake. And also this year, McDonald's unravels the straw or the suction tube for reverse axial withdrawal. It's a tongue twister. This was a limited edition straw that was designed by actual aerospace and robotic engineers, and it was designed to deliver 50% mint and 50% of the chocolate flavor of the Shamrock Shake. I guess outside of that, the Shamrock Shake really has not seen much else, save it turning 50-year-old in 2020. Although I guess you could argue it really turned 50 in 2017, but we'll digress. We'll stick with McDonald's official stance because that's when they released it. But also that year in 2020, the Shamrock Shake finally goes international with sales that take place in both Canada and Ireland, although there's no mention of the return of Uncle O Grimace. I guess probably the Irish would find that a tad bit offensive. There you go. Whether you cared to know, there's your more than a no moment regarding about everything you could possibly want to know, but were afraid to ask about the Shamrock Shakes.
I drink and I know things.
So we got everything all poured out, so it's time to go ahead and give it the old review, sniff test, and the drink test. So let's get started with the beer. So right off the bat, I do get some mint forward flavor that comes into that. It's not as strong as I kind of thought that we might see out of our beer. I kind of expected, based upon when we had our peppermint porter where it was very mint forward flavor on this. This is a little subtle. I do get the chocolate hints that are off of that. So I guess with that, we'll go ahead and give it an old taste test. I will say the kind of normal, maltiness we would get out of a porter, it's a little bit masked on the mint flavoring that comes in off of this. Even though I got some smells of chocolate, not getting really a lot of taste, I'm definitely getting the mint, and that is a well-delayed response. I just got like another kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like a back hit of mint flavoring that kind of came in, whether it was like taste or scent or whatever the heck you want to call it. But it definitely was something that, even though I drank it, got the initial tasting of mint, after the swallow, there was something that just kind of came back and was mint flavored off of that. I guess I will kind of say there is a bit, I don't know, I guess if you want to call it chocolate, I guess I would kind of liken it off to a little bit of, like a thin mint, kind of like I dumped a thin mint in a porter. What type of porter? That's up for debate. But I kind of get the same kind of flavoring that I get out of eating Thin Mints that I do get for drinking this beer. So if you like Thin Mints, the best I can kind of sum up is that it's kind of like drinking liquid Thin Mints in porter beer. But outside of that, I guess, we'll drink a little bit more. From a rating standpoint, it definitely is not, a super wowing type of beer. We'll go right down the middle. I know we do this a lot, but, we'll target it as a 3. 3 out of 5. Again, partially because, I'm not hating it. I'm definitely, I'm not liking it. It's not wowing me off out of anything. It's not as bad as the peppermint porter where that just peppermint or that peppermint flavor just was pervasive all over the place and just made the drink unbearable. This one, I was a little worried about the mint flavoring. It's not too terrible. It works for where it's at, and for how they balance it in. It's not super overpowering. Although I had hoped for a little bit of kind of more of a chocolate forward flavor into it that would kind of mimic out for when we did our Guinness. And there was a good bit of mint and chocolate that kind of went into that and kind of balanced everything out. This one, it's more mint. It could, the addition of a little bit more chocolate, overtones to it would definitely balance out the flavor profile of this beer. So, take it for what it's worth. It's not great. It's not bad. It's right down the middle of the road, and it's serviceable. I know it's probably a death knell for anything, but it works, and we'll deal with it. So with that, it's time. We still got a little bit. We still got a lot left on this guy, and it's time to figure out, will it chug? So obviously it's time to figure out if this beer will chug. We're going to find out if anything changes in flavor profile, if I think I'm going to give it a little bit more better or worse rating after we chug a bunch of the beer. But I don't know. I guess I'm, even though there was a little bit of mint on here, I'm a little worried that when we go to chug it, we're going to get a whole lot of mint flavoring off of this. But I guess there's only one way to find out. So it's time to bottoms up with this. So let's chug it up. So, woo, it chugs barely. Holy crap, that's a lot of mint. It chugs, but there's a whole load of mint flavoring that comes through off of this. My breath is minty fresh right now. I can feel it. If I had any more in my glass, it would have been a little tough to finish out. But, I guess out of the whole grand scheme of things, we're not really going to change much. We'll keep it as a 3 for a rating. Got a little left. But overall, the chug factor, it's there, but it's really tough because the mint really starts pounding through as you try to chug the beer out. So it opens stuff up. It definitely makes you feel minty fresh after you're done with it. So, it's definitely not one. While it is chuggable, I would probably not recommend chugging it. But with that, this is done. I'm done. We're done. And I thank you for tuning in for another edition of Bagel and Booze. And we'll catch you for another review. Thanks all.